If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Central Valley Talk. My name is Ray Johns. I'm your host, and the name of my show is Voices Not Yet Heard. I got a great guest for you that I'm going to introduce to you in a little bit, but first I'd like to talk about something. And that's and my theme song kind of says it all, the people kneeling at the football games. This is America. And I started thinking about this last night, and it is very possibly the only time that we come together as a country, as one person, and stand for something. We don't do it, obviously don't do it religiously. I think it's very, very important, and I'm totally against that. And we talked about this a while back. We talked about it last year when Kaepernick did it, and it seems to be blossoming, and I'm really sick of it. You know, this is America. There must be another venue, another forum that these people can use. And I asked someone yesterday who was talking about this, I said, what is it that you want? I mean, I'm black. I realize that there is some injustices in this country, but you don't use our flag, and you do not use our country to emphasize that. It's wrong. It's just plain like my mother used to tell me when I'd ask her the question, why? And she would say, because, son, it's wrong. Well, people, it's wrong. I'm going to introduce you right now to Sandy Terosian, and I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you, okay? Welcome to the show, by the way.
Well, thank you.
And why don't you just tell us what you do and tell us about your organization, which, by the way, I am 100% back behind this. I'm going to do everything I can to get Sandy on the show a lot of times so she can push this, because of all the shows I've done, this is one of the most important that I've come across, and I think that she has something to say.
Well, can I give a little bit of a background?
Absolutely.
And, do you want me to look at you? Do you want me to look at...
Why don't you look at the camera so they can see you?
Okay.
Let me make sure which one are we using? This one, that one right there. I was looking in the wrong one.
I've been concerned about education for a long time. When my oldest son headed into kindergarten, I considered homeschooling, read information, and then decided, I don't know if it was out of fear, not knowing if I could really do it, we went ahead and put him in public school, and my sister's the one that started homeschooling. And as the years would go by, I would see what her kids knew and what mine didn't, and how...
Was there a major difference?
Oh, yes. My nieces knew all the presidents. My kids didn't know all the presidents. They maybe knew a few if they did a report on a president. My nieces knew all the states and capitals.
Oh, my goodness.
My kids did a state report. And her kids read so well. So that was one thing. I began using her phonics program. I used a lot of her language programs, and my kids hated it, but it was during the summertime, and kids have a lot of spare time. And then as time went on, I began working in the school district, and I was concerned about, they were always trying, the federal government was always trying something new, outcome-based education, Goals 2000. There were intrusive testing. I remember my son was in the 5th grade. I was at my prayer group, and they said, oh yeah, that testing starts today. So I jumped in the car, I drove up to the school, and I pulled him out of school that day. And
prior to the testing?
Prior to the testing. So I've just watched it progress. And then a few years ago, my kids were already out of school, and the whole Common Core standards were the buzz. And I have a sister-in-law that I trust completely. She's a teacher in Sanger Unified. So I asked her what she thought about the Common Core standards, and she said, Sandy, I actually think they're pretty good. And because I trust her, I thought, okay, I trust her. But then time kept going on, and you just kept hearing stuff that was happening. So I called up my sister, the homeschooler, and I said, Kelly, what do you know about the Common Core state standards? And she said, have you watched Building the Machine.
What's
it's called Building the Machine.
Building the Machine.
You can find it on YouTube. So the minute our conversation ended, I pulled up Building the Machine. And the two main speakers on it that are featured are Dr. Sandra Stotsky and Dr. James Milgram. And they were on the validation committee of the Common Core standards, and they were the only two experts in their field. Dr. Stotsky was in language, English language, and Dr. Milgram, he's from Stanford, the math. And neither of them would sign off on the standards. And Dr. Stotsky said one of the things that really concerned her was they're in a room talking, and when they shut the doors, they said, this isn't supposed to be talked about outside of this room. This stays right here. And she thought, well, now wait a minute. So she said that was a real red flag. Anyway, for years they went around the nation talking and sharing. And I'm a Christian, and at the very end of that video, I really believe the Lord told me, I want you to inform parents.
Oh, thank goodness we have people like you. Thank goodness.
I'm not, I know people, passionate is a word that I get called a lot, and I can't change parents' minds. I can't get them to see what I see, but I'm just informing.
Because that's where it starts.
That's exactly. It starts with informing, yeah. And then I worked hard. I've been to Clovis Unified School Boards, I don't know how many times. In fact, at the end of one year, I think they told myself and one other gentleman, you've spoken here 13 times, Sandy's been here 11, and I thought, oh my gosh, they're keeping count. And then I decided to run for the school board thinking I could make a difference. Ran against somebody that I very much respect, but she'd been on the board for 25 years.
The incumbent, yeah.
Yeah, the incumbent. And I felt like it was time. I didn't win the election, but I gave it everything I had, and I'm thankful now that I wasn't elected, because I think I'd have quit by now.
Yes. Because
now that California's brought in some new California history standards, and the superintendent of schools, Tom Torlakson, had them redone without legislative approval. So now
he just did it on his own?
Yes.
Oh
so now we're going to adopt these standards that Williamson Evers, another expert, has gone through and said there's gaps, there's false information, and now we have the new LGBT inclusive sex education.
Explain what that is.
Well, all of our kids have been having sex education in schools for years, even when you and I were back in school.
I don't remember it, but I'm sure we did. I was so interested in baseball, I probably didn't pay any attention.
Believe it or not, I don't think sex education belongs in our school systems. That is really the role of mom and dad, but moms and
with you. I agree with you totally.
Parents have dropped the ball. So the school picked up that responsibility. So now, we now are going to have a curriculum that teaches transgenderism, that will teach how to have safe homosexual sex.
Oh my goodness!
And
are we talking about pre-high school?
We're talking junior high.
Oh my goodness!
So what you may not know, and this is alarming to me, so far 71 parents have pulled their children out, but there's a school up in Rockland, a charter school, and his kindergarten teacher helped him, 5 years old, maybe 6, it was at the end of the year, it happened in June, helped him share with his classmates that he is a boy in a girl's body. And now this is kindergarten.
At 5 years old?
The teacher read 2 books explaining what transgenderism is. Then the boy went to the restroom, changed into girls' clothing, and came back.
That is devastating to me.
So you can just imagine what it did to some of those kids.
Well, of course it did. And it will
that's
affect
because
them
of
for
our
a very
governor.
long time.
But our governor, Governor Brown, passed that.
That does not surprise me. I mean, you know, the fact
So we
that
have
this
our
is
new
a sanctuary
history.
state is all a part of all that. You know.
So that's what's happening in education.
What do you want to see change, Sandy? I want to know your opinion. I value your opinion, and I want them to know. We're here to inform you, and that's why she's here. Thank goodness. What do you want to see happen, and what do you think should happen?
I want to see federal intrusion stopped.
Good.
I am part of United States Parents Involved in Education. We are a nonprofit group of state leaders. We have 30 different chapter presidents in the United States.
And you're headed for Washington, D.C.
I am headed for Washington. I'm on the leadership team. And we are headed to Washington, D.C. on Monday to meet with, I think it's 25 congressmen.
Oh, great.
And
great.
5 different think tanks. American Principal.
I hope that's televised so we can see it back here, some of it.
No, they're private meetings.
Oh, okay.
But right. American Principles Project, the Heritage Foundation, Americans for Tax Reform, Freedom Works, and the Cato Institute. Mm-hmm. So we are going back, and we have a blueprint on what we feel is the best way to shut down the Department of Education.
Good. Right. You're all prepared, huh?
We are.
I hope you're successful.
And we've had people that are critical because it's a huge undertaking. But we understand that it's not just the Department of Education where our funding comes from. It comes from Health and Human Resources. It comes from a Labor Department. But I think we can grab all those mandates, and we want to have national debates. We want to be a part of hearings so that we can take notes and know exactly what we need to do.
And part of this, of course, is informing the public so that they know, because I didn't know. I mean, some of the things you're talking about, I had no idea.
Absolutely.
Someone told me about 6 months ago, and this is how much I don't know. That
you're not supposed to know. They don't want you to know.
Of course they don't. You know, about the Pledge of Allegiance, for crying out loud. That upset me so much that they don't do it in most of the schools or some of the schools. Or
you know what? I can't answer that one. I know they do it in Clovis Unified.
Good.
So.
Yeah.
I know they do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, I just heard that from a teacher, and she's in, I think, Madera County.
Okay.
And she was telling me that, and I was shocked, totally shocked.
Well, I think one of the concerning things is, I have a friend who had to go meet with her daughter and her son's teachers this week. She was so pleased that both teachers are conservative, and they see the stuff that's coming in. And what the teacher even said, I'm conservative, I'm really trying to be careful what I present to the kids, but she said, you have to understand, we have liberal teachers.
Oh, God.
And one of the assignments I'm referring to, and again, I don't want to offend anyone, but her 3rd grade daughter was given an assignment on amazing women. And Nancy Pelosi was one of the amazing women she had to learn about.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Now, there's a lot of amazing women out there.
Of course there are.
Nancy,
Condoleezza Rice.
Thank you.
A lot of
Condoleezza Rice, Rosa Parks. There's a lot of women we could be studying.
Sure.
I wouldn't want my daughter learning that Nancy Pelosi is an amazing woman.
No,
she has accomplished a lot, but the woman stands for abortion. Anyway, so those are the kind of the assignments that we need to be careful. Parents need to understand that. Back to the Common Core, so many of us tried to stop Common Core, and we were unsuccessful, but what we didn't realize at the time, Common Core was a Trojan horse.
Can you explain Common Core, because there's going to be some people that don't exactly know what that means.
Okay, the Common Core state initiatives, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've really thought about that.
Just basically.
They're national standards.
Okay.
Some people will say certain states don't have them. They've rebranded them. They've renamed them. Every state.
But they still have them. They
have
under
them.
A different name.
Absolutely.
Huh? That's what they do all the time. That's a federal government.
Yeah. And so what happened is when we first adopted the Common Core standards, there was something called Race to the Top. So people got into that race because you got money.
Of course.
Of course you got money. So I don't remember exactly how the race worked, but if you won this money, they would come to you and say, here, Ray, you get the money, but you must adopt these national standards.
Absolutely.
And with those national standards, you have to adopt the assessments, and you have to have in place longitudinal data systems, or you have to put them in place. Longitudinal, knowing what we know, goes across borders easily. So these assessments are all done online. Everything, there's so much more, but everything a child does online now, the data is being collected.
Wow, I didn't know that. Everything.
And if they're put into those longitudinal data systems, anybody can get that information. So it first started out with math and language, and for most parents, they've really seen the most difference with the math. I know a child that we met with our, I won't give too much information, our insurance agent, and his son brought home his math work, and it was, for example, 138 plus 42. And to you and I, he got all 11 problems correct because the answer was correct. But the process was wrong, so he got a 0 out of 11.
I don't understand that.
So what he didn't do, if you take 138 plus 42, I hope I can do this right, you're supposed to take away 3 from the 138 and make it 135.
Yeah.
Bring the 3 down to the 42 so that it's easier to add. But because he didn't do that, he missed all 11.
Oh my gosh. He still came up with the right answers, right?
Right, but that doesn't work.
Oh my goodness. That
So
just blows me
now,
away.
granted, they keep saying we want to teach children to be critical thinkers. What you don't realize is we develop our critical thinking skills way down the road. Facts that we learn, math facts, memorization, are what we personally take and use to become critical thinkers. Now, some people add the way I just taught you. Now, if I were to give you a math problem and, is it Mike? No, the guy behind the...
Mike, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if I give you both an addition or a subtraction problem, in your head, you're going to do it different. But you shouldn't be forced to learn it the way that other people think.
Exactly.
So,
to me, the bottom line is the correct answer.
exactly. No.
Oh my goodness.
I have a first grader who missed a math problem one time. It was 3 plus 2 and he put 5. And he got it wrong because he didn't draw 3 circles for the 3 and 2 boxes for the 2 equals 5. But bigger than that, as again I said, Common Core is really a Trojan horse. So now it's also brought in all this social engineering. We want to change the attitudes, the beliefs, the behaviors, and the values. And we now have what's called New Generation Science Standards in the United States. Now, the Fordham Institute was very much supportive and still is of the Common Core. But they are really concerned about the New Generation Science Standards. They went to every state and graded the current science standards. California, they gave California an A for our science standards. They gave the New Generation Science Standards a C minus. But those are the standards we have now.
Yeah.
The problem is it's based on global warming.
It is?
Climate change.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We're going to change the attitudes, beliefs. Do you remember weekly readers? We used to get those in school.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I do.
in one weekly reader, I remember opening it up, and it was sharing how you shouldn't raise pigs, chickens, or cows anymore because of the gas they emit. And I know of a few students that it really shook up because mom and dad have cows, chickens, and pigs.
We had all those.
So they went home and said,
all of those.
Mom, Dad, you can't raise those anymore. It's ruining our air. And they're like, what? So it's changing the attitudes, the values, the beliefs.
Oh my gosh. It's
So, and then we have our new history standards in California.
Let me ask you this, and this is just off the top of my head because I know absolutely nothing, but can part of the change be the people who are graduating and getting teaching credentials? Is that part of it? Can we train these people?
Oh, no, they're being trained.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, yes. Oh, they want all the newbies.
Oh, good.
Because all the young minds have been taught that people like me, the woman on the warpath, we just don't understand how good it is.
Oh my goodness.
So no, it's really because the colleges are teaching it.
That's what I thought. That's
yeah.
kind of what I thought. Well, this is so interesting to me. We're going to take a little break here and go pay some bills. And we'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 and 2.
That right to me, and I gladly stand up. Well, there's pride in every American heart.
Okay, I'm back with Sandy. Before I return to Sandy, she has so much good information. It's kind of the Sandy show today because I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm learning, as are you, and we're going to continue that. But I want to talk about the awful thing that happened in Las Vegas and a few other things. I know it's difficult for us to understand what happened, you know, because we don't think the way these idiots think. It reminded me back of, it went all the way back to Hinckley. Now, listen to this. I did a little due diligence. All these years that Mr. Hinckley has been in prison, and now he's out, and as I understand it, he's living in his mother, I understand, is fairly wealthy. So he's living in a gated community with his mother. I surmise probably walking to McDonald's every day having a Big Mac, you know, and this guy's in his 60s, and he went out and we paid for all these years upwards of $6 million to keep this man in prison and clothe him and feed him and do all this stuff. And I can't help but think that black man who said, I'm going to go out and kill white people, that just upsets me so much, and he shot all those poor innocent people and affected all those lives and for the rest of their lives. And I can't help but think that he could go the same way, you know, prison for we have to eliminate these people from our society. We have to. I know that's harsh. And if it's not through the death penalty, then it's keeping them in an institution for the rest of their lives, regardless of what their cost, because they come back and they cost us the most valuable thing that we have, and that's lives. I'm going to get off this soapbox right now, and I'm going to get back to Sandy. Okay. We want to hear from you.
Okay. So I kind of want to get back to USPI, the group I'm a part of, United States Parents Involved in Education. We have 33 chapters in 33 states. I am the president of California Pi. I have a Facebook page that is CAPIE, and I'd love for you to join it. I've always got education.
I'll tell you right now, I'll join it.
I've got educational information, constantly posting. It's not a personal website. It's where I'm posting information about what's happening specifically in California. I'm also on the leadership team of United States Parents Involved in Education, or USPI. We also have a Facebook page. And we are headed to Washington, D.C. on Monday, I think I said earlier, to meet with congressmen and think tanks. And if you will visit USPI.org, we have a petition that we would like you to sign.
Please.
We want to be able to hand that petition to these congressmen and to these think tanks, showing that parents want the Department of Education abolished. And I don't think people realize the Department of Education isn't quite 40 years old. It was established in 1979 by President Jimmy Carter, and just 2 years later, it was President Reagan that wanted to abolish the Department of Education. And what I didn't realize was that his Vice President, Bush, was really not a true conservative.
And they've said that. They said that. They've said that for years.
Yep. And he had a lot to do with not pushing forward with eliminating the Department of Education. But President Reagan knew that by eliminating the Department of Education, he could reduce the budget, and that the wishes of Washington should not determine the education of children. I don't know if people realize that. It's unconstitutional for the federal government to have anything to do with education.
See, I didn't know that.
There is a code that says they are not to have anything to do with administration, with textbooks, with anything to do with education.
And here they're all involved in all of it.
Yeah. Well, here we are 40 years later, and despite dramatic federal spending increases over time, education outcomes have not improved. I read in the LA Times yesterday, you know, we were all told, don't worry about the results, these first results of these Common Core assessments, the SBAC, they're going to get better. And here it is, I believe it's 3 or 4 years of solid testing, and the results are stagnant. Now, I'm also I'm not a proponent of all this testing. We are testing kids so much, and I'm a tutor. I don't have to give them a test to know where they're at. I know exactly how my kids are doing, what they know and what they don't know. But again, these assessments are online.
Isn't that the bottom line, though?
There you go.
You know that? I mean,
absolutely.
And you can adjust things because of that.
Yeah.
You know.
But I think the proof is out there. The federal government's involvement in education has been a failure.
Obviously.
Nothing has improved over
Yeah.
these 40 years, and it's time to abolish it.
I hope that all of you, would you give that website again so that, or
Okay. It is
please.
USPIE, so it's USPIE.org. You can read all about it. We have.
And they can sign the.
They can sign the petition. It's
Please.
actually on the main page
I'm
right
going to
now.
do that tonight.
Thank you.
I will do it
Thank
tonight,
you.
and I encourage everybody. And I am going to ask that. I'm going to put her on the spot right here where I got it. She can't run away yet. See, and will you come back?
Oh, yes.
Please, please. This is so important, and
Absolutely.
it's so important to inform the people about this. This is very, very important. This is the children's. I don't have any children, but this is the children's future.
It is. It is. And I have grandkids. You know, my kids are out of school, but I have grandkids.
Yeah.
The good news is
Oh yeah.
there is a representative from Kentucky. His name is Thomas Massey. He is a Republican. And on February 7th of this year, he introduced a bill, H.R. 899. And it contains just one sentence. And it said the Department of Education shall terminate on December 31st, 2018.
Let's hope so.
So we do have
Let's
a
hope so.
representative now,
Good.
and he also has. There are also 6 Republican members of Congress who have co-sponsored the bill.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it is excellent.
You'll probably
So-
be meeting with them while you're back there too, huh?
We're trying,
Probably.
yes,
Good.
yes.
I hope you can.
So
This is so very important, ladies and gentlemen. It really is. And I hope that you will do this. I hope you will sign this petition. I'm going to sign it. I'm going to encourage everyone I know. And I know I can get at least 30 or 40 signatures. I know that I
perfect,
can.
perfect. We're at 2,000 right now, and wanting to definitely have more before we go.
Oh, I hope you do. I hope you have a lot more before you go. You continue. because
Okay.
this is-
Well,
this-
I want to read something. This
Yeah.
Thomas Massey, in a press release, Massey said, neither Congress nor the President, through his appointees, has the constitutional authority to dictate how and what our children must learn. And that's why USPIE is going to Washington, D.C. and meeting, because we are in complete agreement. We are women on a warpath, fighting to protect America's children and our nation.
Thank goodness we have people like you. Thank goodness.
Massey continued by saying, unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. should not be in charge of our children's intellectual and moral development. States and local communities are best positioned to shape curricula that meet the needs of their students. Schools should be accountable, but parents have the right to choose the most appropriate educational opportunity for their children, whether that's homeschooling, private school, or public school.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited because in a very small way, I'm a little part of this.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I just know you're going to be successful.
I do too.
I just know it.
I do
you're
too.
Determined, like you said, you're passionate about it. And
I am.
And it's a worthwhile cause, and you're going to make a difference. Thank goodness we have people like you that make a difference. And it's when you come, what's more important? What is more important? And like I said, I don't have children. I wish I had. That's one thing in my life that I'm going to miss when it's time for me to make that transition, is that I didn't have any children. But, I realize how very important this is, because they're the future, for one thing.
Yeah, it's a really hard time. I worked in the resource specialist program in Clovis Unified for years, and in our classroom, even when Common Core came out, we were still using traditional math because that's what our kids could grasp the easiest. We were still using true systematic phonics. So my kids, I was able to take non-readers to kids who were reading. But I kept watching what was happening. And I know my boss and my best friend, could see that it was really beginning to wear on me. And there's things that have happened in the district, teachers that have come to me, and because they're not willing to share those things yet publicly, I've had to keep those inside. But there's alarming things that have happened.
Because they're afraid of repercussions?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, certainly that would be it.
I know one teacher who has left the district, but her kids are still there.
Yeah, so same.
And so, but when you have a certain status quo to meet, you will do anything to stay there.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It does.
Anyway, so for the last few years, I would watch moms bring those sweet little kindergartners to school and not cry out loud, but a tear or two would always drop because I thought, I don't think you get it. I didn't even get it. And I know even my kids went through during a time when things were still changing. And it was, okay, this is the year that we're going through right now is my second year. So a year and a half ago, I remember looking out and I thought, no, I can't do this anymore.
I've got to ask you this. How long have you been in education?
Well, in the classroom I was in the classroom for 14 years.
Wow, okay.
But I looked out that day and said, I can't do this anymore. I don't want my blood on this.
Yeah.
And it's, I've used this analogy, I've shared it with people, and it might seem a little extreme to some people, but for me, it would be like working at an abortion clinic. Now, not doing abortions, not having anything to do with it,
But
just
still there.
working at the desk. So for me, being involved in a system that I felt, that I know is dumbing down our children, I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So
Good for you. Good for you.
I quit my job. And there's other reasons I quit, but again, I can't share those because I am
understand.
holding information confidential. So.
Oh, it's wonderful that we have people like you that are making a difference, and they do make a difference. I want you to talk. I want you to inform these people. And because I want people to go at the end of this show or during this show, and I want you to sign that petition. This is so very important. And by the way, a number will appear on the screen. You'll see it. If you'd like to call in and talk to Sandy, call in and talk to Sandy. You can talk to me next week. Call in and talk to Sandy. If you have questions about any of this, please call in and talk to her, and she'll answer your questions.
Yep.
You go ahead, Sandy.
I just want to encourage parents. I have a lot of friends that trust the system. I just want they need to pay attention to what is going on, what their children are being taught on a daily basis. And I believe school districts are doing their absolute best, but I know it's all about money. Money talks. There's always strings attached with federal money. And I know people are concerned if you shut down the Department of Education, what will happen with all the funding? Well, you can imagine all the money that is being funneled through them, and that would come straight to the states. I know I looked up the other day, there are 4,400 employees of the Department of Education.
4,400?
4,400. And basically what I've read, a lot of paper pushers.
How much money is that? That must be phenomenal.
Their salaries are $479 million.
Oh my, that is almost $500 million right there.
So if you take that and you divide it up, every one of those employees are making over $100,000.
Oh my gosh. No wonder they wanted to continue.
Of course.
You know, it's a cash cow for them.
Yep. Absolutely.
How sad.
It
How
is.
sad. At the expense of what? Our children.
Our children.
The children.
Our children. Dr. Milgram that I mentioned in the beginning, who was on the validation committee, he had said not the other day, it's probably been a few months where I read, once a child has had 4 years of Common Core math, it will be almost impossible to undo
Oh my gosh.
what they've been taught.
Oh.
So, and I think
Sad.
one of my biggest concerns is the data collection. And I remember speaking to administrators and saying, well, we would never, ever collect data on a child. And I know they wouldn't intentionally. But do you remember when I said, when they adopted the Common Core standards, they had to have 3 things put together? Well, the school districts, yes, even in California, if you notice, they all had to rewire all their hardwire systems, computers had to be added, everything had to be updated. And are you on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, I am.
so this is my analogy. If you today went and looked up, you wanted to buy some more Trump shirts or have some more made. Now, you didn't plug your name in, you don't have an account, you just were looking at shirts. When you go to Facebook a few minutes later, what shows up on your Facebook page? Trump shirts.
Sure.
Did you give them permission
No.
to collect that data and
No.
put it on your Facebook page?
No.
No. So we don't have to give permission. It's an automatic. So I believe
That has to be stopped.
when a child, well, that's the number one thing. That's my number one concern with what's going on in
I can see why.
education. It's when a child plugs into his computer, he has to use his code. And when you're answering questions on a test, they're now monitoring how you answer it. They're monitoring everything. And so that information is being collected. They know everything about your children. They know everything about you. They know where you work. It's extensive.
You know, Ronald Reagan, my favorite president. By
Yes, most people's.
the way. He's
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
my favorite president. I love Ronald Reagan. And he was adamant about getting government
Out.
out completely.
Absolutely.
Out. And he constantly, I think that was one of his main things. He
It was.
constantly talked about that, you know.
Oh yeah, he saw the problem in it, and that's the problem with what we have right now. So I understand why schools quote follow the law, because if they don't follow the law, they'll lose the
Their
money.
funding, sure.
But even
Absolutely.
in California, if you think about it, we have, I can't even remember the number now, of school districts. So let's just use the LGBT inclusive sex education.
Okay.
If every school district or the majority stood up together and said no, do you think that Governor Brown could make them do it? The problem is we are not united.
That's what needs to happen. Huh?
Absolutely.
You're right.
With everything.
And you guys are in the process of doing that too, aren't you?
Absolutely. I think now a lot of parents are doing it, but it's not making enough of a difference in California.
What can happen, Sandy, to make a difference? What needs to happen?
Well,
Your
number
opinion.
one, on state assessments, 95% of all students have to take the test in order to receive funding. So we've been working for years on trying to get more than 5% of our parents to opt their children out of the state testing at the end of the year. If we could do that. Now granted, it penalizes, there's a penalty if you
Yeah.
don't do that. But
But
somehow...
what's the alternative? I mean, look at the alternative.
Exactly. Well, the reason it's so important, you've got to have a mass exodus, I believe. And I know just this year, personally, 3 families that are now homeschooling because they've realized, I can't do this. I can't send my kids to public school and allow what I consider brainwashing to take place. And it's going to take that, with that incident up in Rockland with the little boy that, said he
Yeah.
was transgender.
Yeah.
71 parents pulled their children out of that charter school. That makes an impact.
Yes, it does.
It
Yes,
really
Especially
does.
being a charter school, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love to see, one of the other things I'd kind of like to do, and I have a very dear friend, Beth Swan, and we've talked about doing a co-op. And I think if enough of us would start these homeschool co-ops, going off on your own, it's not easy.
No, it isn't.
But I've heard, what have I heard? Oh, my child will lose out on the social aspect. They will lose out on sports. That's not true. Homeschooling doesn't mean you keep them inside your 4 walls.
Yeah.
There is such support that parents don't realize how much social interaction they can have. And also, it's really a law that you can still play organized sports through your school district.
Oh, that's
But
wonderful. See, I didn't know that.
But you
That's
do
great.
have to fight it, which is why we didn't homeschool.
Yeah.
We were going to pull our boys out because we knew they could still play sports at the local school. But our local school wasn't real cooperative. So being that my husband was a former athlete, that was a hard one for him to forego.
Yeah.
So we did keep the boys in school.
Oh,
And,
I bet it would. It would have been a hard thing for me.
oh, absolutely. So, and my boys were good athletes.
Yeah. Football players?
Yeah.
No baseball players?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Actually, my youngest, well, they were both catchers. My oldest
they
gave it
were?
up. Yeah, gave it up.
Hardest
after
job in baseball.
It is. My youngest, I remember at 8th grade when, season was over and the coach was talking, he said, I've coached a lot of kids, but out of all the kids I've coached, I think this guy right here could make it big time.
They're special. Catchers are special. I've never been a catcher. I don't want to be a catcher, but they are very, very special. It's always been, of course, pitchers. Everybody's looking for pitchers, but I don't know if you know this or not, but the last 5 or 10 years in the major leagues, catchers have been very special. There's scouts going out looking at catchers. That's how important they are.
He was a 3-sport guy, and when he finally got to high school, he said, you know what, I've never gone home after school. And he said, I really want to go home after school one day instead. So he chose to give up baseball, and he stuck with football and wrestling. And wrestling is a hard sport for a mom to watch.
Oh, yeah.
I would have rather he gave
that.
wrestling, but he didn't. And but he was successful. He did good. So.
Well, he comes from that football.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And one thing I really want to emphasize, I don't want any teachers to think that I am in any way opposed to them. I support good. We have wonderful, caring, loving teachers. It's not the teacher's fault for what's going on.
Of course not. It's a federal government. That's a problem.
And for a while, we can blame colleges too, because if we've got teachers that aren't teaching true systematic phonics, and when I say true systematic phonics, when I sit down with my kids, and they're not too young, when we're going through what I call phonograms, I don't even call them letters, they learn that an A has 3 sounds. Did you know that?
I know it has. I thought it had 2.
Okay, so I want you to pronounce the word B-A-L-L.
Ball. Okay.
What's the A say? Aw.
Aw.
When an A comes before an L or a double L, it usually says aw. There are exceptions, like in the word father. But we need to teach kids that in order it says a, then it says a. I also teach that when a vowel, A, E, O, or U, comes at the end of a syllable, he says his name. Navy, baby.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Well, think of the word she, me, we, and I teach the, not the, because it's the E comes at the end. So even 5-year-olds are learning this.
Oh, this is wonderful.
So, but if you teach it that way, when they get to words, think of the word though, T-H-O-U-G-H, through, T-H-R-O-U-G-H, though, through, thought, O-U-G-H says 6 things. So when a child's first learning how to read, if they get to a word and the word is drought, they're going to have to go through O-U, uff, off, ah, ow, drought. Now granted, context clues do help by the time you're reading, but those are the tools that you need to understand and to truly be a strong reader. So I also teach, why does C say k in cat and s in the word scent, like in 1 cent? Do you know why?
No.
Because when a C, by the way, it's the only rule that never changes in the English language. If a C is followed by an E, I, or a Y, it says S. That's it. Cyclone, cement, celery.
Oh, interesting.
So I teach all those rules.
I want to interject here for a second because I want to see if you remember this. And I'm not a proponent or fond of commercials, but there's a couple of commercials that I really like. One commercial was on 5 or 6 years ago, and it's about a little boy. And he and his dad are doing something outside, like gardening or something, and he says to his dad, he says, Dad, I think I want to be a teacher. And his dad said, well, I thought you wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer. And he said, Dad, without teachers, where would doctors and lawyers come from?
Absolutely.
I'm not, the first time I heard that, it brought a tear to my eye.
Absolutely.
Because I am where I'm at because of a lot of great teachers. 2 wonderful teachers that, I'm a writer, 2 wonderful professors. And I majored in theater. at Fresno State, Eddie Manuel, I'm going to mention their name, and Terry Miller, my playwriting instructors, have made me the writer that I am. And my first grade teacher, Mrs. Thiessen, and who is still alive, by the way, I was at the Chowchilla Fair about 3 years ago.
And you saw her.
Well, I went up to, I didn't recognize her, and I went up to the booth because her husband was the head of the Rotary Club or something, and I said, I'd like a beer. And she said, no. And I'm looking at her, and I said, I can't buy a beer here? And she said, no, because I still think of you as 6 years old in the first grade. And we laughed, and we hugged. Yeah. I hung around that all afternoon. She was so wonderful. You have to remember that when I went to Chowchilla, I was the only little black kid until my brother came.
I bet.
2 years. And I ran into some opposition, and she quelled it. This was a long time ago. Can you imagine? She quelled it, and she got in trouble. She got in trouble for getting involved back then.
Wow.
You know, and it didn't matter to her and her husband. Wonderful, the Thiessens. Wonderful. Her name is Mrs. Thiessen. I still call her Mrs. Thiessen. And I got ready to go, and she says, Ray, you're over 50 years old. You don't have to call me Mrs. Thiessen. I said, yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Do you okay, but that's an example of how much we used to respect teachers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no way in the world I wouldn't call her Mrs. Thiessen if she walked in here today.
Isn't that amazing? And see, we don't have that. That's one of the things that have changed too. We have you heard of restorative justice? Restorative justice is now, well, it's an Obama order. And I know they've tried it up in Oakland. Thank goodness. I think Clovis Unified is still using zero tolerance. And again, there's a happy medium a little bit because it doesn't always have to be so cut and dry, but with restorative justice, I know up in Oakland they've been using it. And what they do is really no matter what the offense is, you're called in and you're told to apologize. And one example is one girl in class, somebody lit her hair on fire. And even if a chair is thrown across the classroom, no matter what you do, you just have to sit down and talk and say you're sorry. It doesn't work. Kids know. We had a young man that we had in class for years, and we really poured our heart and time into him. But he would just get up and say, point his finger in our face and say, you can't tell me what to do, and walk out. And I thought, he's in the 5th grade. I wouldn't have done that as a senior in high school because you respected your teachers.
Absolutely, you didn't do anything. You know, back when I was in school, because I know I got in trouble, if you did something wrong, you know, of course you got in trouble at school, and then they notified your parents, and boy... Hey, I did not want to go home. It wasn't my dad. My dad, you should have seen my dad. He had 22-inch arms. He was huge. He wasn't the tough one. It was my 4'11" mother who was what I was afraid of. You know, you were in trouble when you got home.
Yeah. You know. Oh, that's what I remember. I think my son was in the 2nd grade, and he'd ventured over to what is the snack bar at school, and I guess you weren't supposed to go over there. And I was working in the classroom that day, and I remember him walking in and looking at me, and I'd already been told he'd been sent to the office. And he came in and he tried to smile, and by the time he got to me, these tears were just flooding. And I said, "Are you okay?" He goes, "I was just so afraid to see you, Mom." So
it was like, please, I remember saying this to them, look, I'll do whatever you want. Don't call my mother. Please don't call my mother. I'll do anything,
Well, I remember, I did get sent to the office one time, and it was, I can't remember if I was getting teased what was happening. I had carrot sticks in my lunch, and I threw a carrot stick. I got sent to the office for that. I got in big trouble.
Seems like I was always. You know, we're running out of time here, and what I'd like for you to do, Sandy, if you would, it's 3:54.
Okay.
Make a last-ditch effort, if you will.
Okay.
About what you're trying to do.
Okay.
And you've already agreed. I got you now. You already agreed to come back, so you got to come back.
I will.
And then I'll do my close. But you go ahead. Right.
Okay. I just want to encourage everyone, parents, grandparents, concerned citizens, even Ray, who says he doesn't have children. The future of our children's education is at stake. Absolutely. The federal government has no business intervening in our education system. I am headed with 3 other women to Washington, D.C. next week, with United States Parents Involved in Education. We have a blueprint completely written out, ready to hand to congressmen and think tanks so that we can shut down the Department of Education by December 31st of 2018 with the help of Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky and his 6 co-sponsors. Please go to uspie.org, uspie.org, and sign our petition.
I got to tell you, this has been one of my best shows.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad you're coming back.
Thank you. I will.
I'm going to end the way I always end this week, and I want to tell you a little special story. I came out of the gym that Sandy and I both attend. We're in the spin class. She's great. I'm struggling. But anyway, we're in this class, and it's a great class. I love it. A shout out to our instructors who are wonderful in this class. I love GB3. Anyway, I want to close like I always do, and that's in encouraging you when you see a police officer to go up and shake his hand and say something good to him. Okay, we do this every week. I say this every week. Well, this morning I walked out, and there were 2 of them driving through. 2 women. I've never seen 2 women as partners. I've seen a man and a woman, you know, but I've never seen 2 women. And I stopped them and I told them how much we appreciated them. One of them got out of the car and walked around the thing and shook my hand and hugged me. I mean, if you've never been hugged by a female policeman, it makes you feel so good. It does. It makes you feel so good that they appreciate that. So please, interrupt them. If you see them in a restaurant, maybe having lunch, maybe sitting under a tree like the guy a couple of weeks ago, and they appreciate it so much because they get so much negativity. Let's support our local law enforcement. Let's tell them how important they are to us. So ladies and gentlemen, until we meet next week, joyously next Friday at 3 o'clock, heaven's blessings.
Time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American wearing